Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast. We just finished up talking some college basketball for the day. Did just briefly, very briefly, on the note of DJ Burns and NC State. I just got a notification about the fact that despite the NFL rumors, DJ Burns is looking to play in the NBA. So if you had any hopes for that, I wouldn't get too wrapped up in it. But again, we'll see how that all plays out for him. But now we are going to be switching on to some MLB thoughts and talking about, I want to talk about the opening series, the biggest storylines across the league as a whole. But there were a handful of big storylines that took place yesterday that I first want to dive into, starting with Ronel Blanco's no-hitter, the first no-hitter of the 2024 MLB season. Blanco, if you haven't heard the name, it's because he had only made 7 starts coming into this game. He is 30 years old and yet has not made very many MLB appearances up to this point in his career, but yesterday he made a name for himself, throwing a complete no-hitter against the Blue Jays. His final line included 7 strikeouts and just 2 walks. Blanco is somebody who really was not expected to be a part of the Astros starting rotation for the most part, but because of some injuries, the Justin Verlander injury is the biggest one in that aspect, but because of some opportunities, Blanco was able to find his way into the final rotational spot for the Astros, pitching their 5th game, and boy did they need him in this one. Obviously the offense came to play, so not to say that if he was maybe not quite as good, they still couldn't win, but the Astros were coming off being swept by the Yankees in their opening series, and now they come out in dominant fashion against the Blue Jays, who still, they've been off to an okay start. The Blue Jays are weird. Everybody expects them to take that leap. I feel like a lot of people are sort of off the scent of Toronto, but they are a team that has plenty of guys offensively that if they make the postseason, they can be dangerous and possibly rival the Astros and others for winning the AL pennant. But in this game, Blanco was lights out for the Astros and possibly made a case for himself for being a part of this Astros rotation moving forward. It's still going to be some time until we see Verlander back from injury, and this is a great way for him to start that type of a campaign. I do also just want to sort of take a bigger picture look as well with the Astros as a whole, because you have to give their pitching development such credit, because we've seen more than any other team the past couple of years this group be able to come out and really deal, where we now have, they have the most no-hitter games since the beginning of the 2022 season. This is also including, well, you can look at it either way. If you want to include a combined effort versus an individual effort, they have either one. And they've been really impressive, especially doing so in their postseason game a couple years ago, where Javier had his 6, and then the rest of the group there rounded it out, and they were able to come away with that one. But this is Houston's 4th no-hitter, whether individual or combined, since the beginning of 2022, and I just feel like when it comes to not just their pitchers, but really overall the development of players in this system, they've done such an incredible job. And obviously, I feel like at this point, I think we're probably just past as a whole the situation from the cheating scandal years in like 2017, 19, I believe was maybe the year as well, but it feels like we're far enough removed from that. And I know that I'm really gassing up a 1-4 team right now, but it's not just about the beginning of this season, because I can almost guarantee you that as long as 70% of their key players are available when the final stretch of the season comes through, that they will be in contention for winning the American League yet again. And they've just done such a tremendous job of bringing on all this new talent and just constantly finding ways to sort of improve on their roster. We saw, and for everything that it means being the pitcher individual, there's another half that sort of is involved in this, and that is their catcher. The way that they've been able to have Yanier Diaz the past, 12 or so months, where last year he was playing a little bit more of a platoon role along with Maldonado, who was, of course, tremendous defensively, but was, a pitcher's delight to see him, an opposing pitcher's delight, that is, to see up at the plate. And Diaz steps in, and in just the second series of the season of him being the full-time catcher, he catches a no-hitter, which is you do have to give him credit for that as well. I just feel like this Astros organization, other than the scandals aside, has been so well run the past handful of years, and there's a reason why they've been to as many championship games as they have, or championship series, at least American League. I believe they're going on 7 straight years now of American League championship series appearances, and they just continue to get the job done there. But we will obviously continue to talk about the Astros as the season comes along, but I did want to also dive into the fact that Josh Jung yesterday suffered an injury. I believe it is a wrist fracture, which is very unfortunate. Jung was well on his way last season to being the American League Rookie of the Year, it seemed like, up until he suffered an injury about halfway through the season that took him out for the last few months of the year. Now, he ended up coming back for the playoffs and was impactful there, and ultimately I would be willing to bet that he cares much more about winning the championship than he does, or the World Series, than he does about winning Rookie of the Year. But again, just a freak incident here as well. That's unfortunate to see another thing go wrong with Jung early in his career, where he was just hit by a pitch. It's not necessarily it's not his fault whatsoever that he's been put in this position, but it is a little bit hindering of a couple stretches of injuries here that have been really harmful to him, and hopefully we can see him fully healthy. This is a Rangers team that definitely wants him to be a big part of their future, and he is showing to be one of the big parts of their core. But again, just super unfortunate with him. He missed spring training as well earlier this year, so he just cannot catch a break, which is really unfortunate to see. But he's a tremendous player, and we will see whether or not when he will be able to return. We don't have a timetable just yet, but we will keep you updated on that as soon as we possibly can. And I guess the last sort of thing that we will briefly touch on here before we take our final break is Mike Clevinger getting an extension from the Chicago White Sox. The White Sox have been a pretty abysmal team, of course, as of the past couple years, but he's done a good job of stepping in and being a solid rotational arm for them. Posted a 3.77 ERA last season, and they have actually a couple pitchers that could potentially be some trade moves as the season progresses. I know that a lot of White Sox fans are hoping that things can eventually move more so in the direction of win now, but they are unfortunately still a good ways away from that. But maybe it's better to re-sign him and get him back out on the diamond than to let him walk and to have nothing for it in return. As it currently stands, the White Sox are off to an 0-4 start. I don't think they've won since September. Just not great stuff for them. And obviously, season is still very young, so you can't overreact to that stat individually. But definitely a long ways to go here for Chicago. But on the bright side, you have Luis Robert, so that is something that you can sort of stick your flag in. But that is all we have time for on this subject. We are going to be taking our final break, and then we are going to dive into the biggest storylines and most eye-popping things from the first week of MLB games, the opening series, and we will be diving into all of that. So stick with us, and we will be right back.